Hey guys, coming at you another podcast here from the floor of Medicarians. So, pardon the background noise and the ambiance. And we've got a guest with us, Amanda. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Amanda Brewton. I am the owner of Medicare Answers Now. I am also the creative director and Agent Symposium here at Medicarians. This is my second year doing that, so it's my job to help with content and speakers and getting the agents here and making sure that they're warm and comfortable and learning and networking and all of the things, and it's a great time. So thank you for having me.
I already have a lot of questions, Amanda.
Sure.
So between Medicare Answers Now, involvement with Medicarians, involvement with NABIP and other organizations.
Yeah.
What does that time split look like for you?
So everybody asks, do I sleep? What has to happen? I do have my agency, and then I have three. I have this conference, which is the biggest one that I'm involved with. Then I have Medicare Margaritas, which this year will actually be its last year because these two are too close together. And then I have Ms. Medicare, which actually blew me up in a way, which is in July, which is my women-only conference. And no, I don't hate men, not at all. It just ended up. Oh, but you'd be amazed at how many people do, which is why I wanted to say it. I do content for both men and women, but then that went to an offshoot of two Facebook groups that have thousands of people in them as well. Time management is a huge thing. I practice a Franklin Covey time management philosophy. I live and die by my calendar. Yes, I do have a personal life, but everything is planned. Everything down to the minute. This week, the focus is 100% Medicarians. Next week, it will be more on business. And then it varies. I spend 6 months on the road and 6 months off the road, and it's nuts, but I love what I do.
Yeah, how did you get involved initially with Medicarians as the creative director for the content programming?
Funny you should ask. So Ms. Med started, the boys got mad that the girls had a conference and they didn't, and I couldn't initially it was because, I hate men. And I'm like, no, that is not the case. So then the second year I came back and I'm like, what is the problem? Why are you guys so upset about this? And they're like, Amanda, we want to be in and we want the same content. We want to learn from you. And I went, oh, well, no one wants to come to Cleveland in the middle of February. Oh God, the amount of snow. So let me figure out where I can go first quarter on location. And we did Medicarians. So I do Medicarians for the first year. I get down there and somebody says, you need a West Coast conference. And I'm like, I need this like a hole in my head. I can't do this. And I am incredibly big on free content. And in-person free content, any kind of content that I can make, that's what I do. It's what has created my career, my name. I've been doing this 20 years. So I started on the carrier side and then went out. And I said, I can't do a third conference. Well, by the end of it, they're like, well, do you know that Medicarians is looking at bringing back the Agent Symposium? And you should have a conversation. So I reached out and I said, if you're doing this, philosophically, we have the same goal here. And let's have a conversation. And we did, and we hit it off. And then from there,
with Jay or with
it
Sam?
it was initially with Sonia, and then it was Sonia and Jay. I didn't meet Sam until the first Medicarians last year.
Okay.
Here, but we had communicated a little bit via LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. But I do biweekly calls with with Sonia and Jay, doing the planning, and we plan these for a full year. Mm-hmm. We're already talking about 2026 content and updates and everything else, and where we're looking at taking things, and which is super cool. It is so exciting to hear so many people have such a good takeaway and learn so much from this event. So we just clicked, and last year they went, okay, well, we wanted to have about a couple thousand people here. We ended up with over 3. This year we have over 4.
Perfect.
So it went.
Well, that's cool. So you've spoken at a couple panels here as well, and then we've been having a lot of conversations with agents. What is kind of like on your front of mind right now, or what is your major takeaway or message that you're trying to give to agents at this particular time?
So my biggest thing right now is a lot of agents feel helpless when it comes to all the regulation and all of the unrest in the industry. They're worried about their jobs and their careers and providing for their families, and they don't know how to move forward to help protect that. And they want to have a voice. So I have been spending a large amount of time working with the National Association of Benefits and Insurance Professionals, which is known as NABIP. I am on their Medicare advisory group, which works directly with CMS and other legislators. And
Formerly NAHU, for those that
yes,
don't.
formerly NAHU, yes.
Right.
But they have a select group of a dozen of us that work as a task force, if you will, that work directly with various levels of legislation. So like when NABIP just published the press release regarding the feedback on the Wyden report that just came out last week, it was us that went through within 24 hours, read the 40-page document, and then put our comments in, citing our sources as to, okay, this is our rebuttal as to what needs to happen, and this is what we want top of mind. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I do want to mention, and my main focus right now, is talking to agents about, you want to get involved. It's as simple as a simple email. It's as easy as a simple email that you can send to your clients regarding the Brokers Making a Difference campaign. It's getting a 5-question survey that is just asking your client, did you find any benefit working with an agent worth working with me today? If you did, what was your experience? The next question is, do you have any concern about Medicare? Third question is, what city do you live in? Fourth question is what state do you live in? Because we need that for the legislators. Right. And then the last one is which part of Medicare do you have? Do you have traditional? Do you have Advantage? Have you had both? And that survey is being compiled. We have over 11,000 of them now. And initially when we rolled it out, no one thought that we'd have as many as we do. And I've been screaming it from the rooftops. NABIP has been screaming it from the rooftops. We need your involvement to collect these. And what we're doing is we have created 50 different packets for each individual state, so that gives the quotes from each of the constituents within that state when we talk with those legislators. And I've had people that they've come back and they're like, okay, well, the survey's not really going to do anything. Oh, but NABIP does a Capitol conference the last week of February, which it is one of the single most important events that an agent can go to. It is life-changing, and I mean that without a doubt. What ends up happening is that we took those surveys. We created these packets, if you will. We had meetings with the Senate Finance Committee as we're sitting across the table and we're having their discussions about our concerns. And at one point in the conversation, we said, well, you know what? We compiled this survey and we have feedback from 10,000 of the beneficiaries. And this is what they're saying. And the people that we met with went, really? Tell us more. There is no major place.
Legislators or who specifically?
DC. We met with staffers and legislators. There was all sorts of different. The one congressional reception, they had 16 legislators at that event. And then each chapter makes meetings with their legislators also. I also took meetings with the Ways and Means Committee this year. But it allowed us to talk on a level, because now we can, it's one thing, you don't know me from Adam. So if I tell you I'm a good agent, you're going to roll your eyes at me and go, sure you are. Mm-hmm. Because no one's going to say, hey, I screw people over, right?
Right.
But if I go ahead and I say, I can prove it. Here, it's just like a Google review, right?
Yeah.
But if I can say I have 10,000 of these where no one else in the industry is providing that kind of evidence of what we do, it highlights and it allows us to have more of a voice. Right after CapCon, which was at the end of February of this year, in the last month and a half, the amount of traction and visibility that would have been picked up in the press, the conversations that we've had with Paragon, Commonwealth, we had a meeting with MedPAC.
Yeah.
We did, there are so many additional meetings that they're now going, how do we all work together? We now have a seat at the table. So where a year ago, everybody felt helpless and unheard and that there was nothing being done, this is how we collectively move the table, is by collecting. Agents, I need you to collect these surveys. And you do it by going to brokersmakingadifference.org, which is the NABIP website.
Okay.
Please do. And that then allows us, and you don't have to be a member to do it.
Right.
Anybody can help us. And there's a bunch of us that will do the heavy lifting if you're afraid to go speak with legislators. But this is how you get involved. This is how we highlight the good that we do. And when your clients want to help you, they want to be able to say, yes, they do a good job. I wouldn't be able to choose between meds and food if I didn't have this help. And that's what we need to highlight.
So, Amanda, I think that one thing I want to maybe go back, rewind a step on is I think us here at the table, we're all very familiar with a lot of the topics that we're trying to affect some change with.
Yeah.
Right? And we're talking about getting involved, on the Hill, so to speak. But what are some of those big priority agenda items for the broker, the agent community, the distribution community?
Yeah.
What are those things right now that are a concern that we're trying to affect some change?
So one of the things that we did, March 3rd, we submitted a collective joint letter to the Senate Majority and Minority Leader and the House Majority and Minority Leader that also had these comments from these constituents in it. But there were 5 major headings in this letter of things that we wanted to put in front of Congress as priority. One of them is the one that everybody's concerned about is, what's happening with commissions, what's happening with the choices that a beneficiary has, as well as the steering that is happening that the carrier is causing. It's not the agent, it's the carrier that is, when they choose to not have commissions, things are commissionable, of course, they come off of our quoting and enrollment tools.
Right.
It makes it harder for agents to go ahead and do enrollments and do quotes. It makes it harder for the beneficiary to enroll. They have to do paper. They have to call in.
And suppress plans.
Yes.
And to kind of add some color for people who maybe don't understand and they're not really ingrained in the industry, you talked about it's coming off the platform. Well, the reason it's coming off the platform is because we on this side of it, on the FMO distribution side, that's a cost that we incur, right? Like that's not a SaaS out there that's free or no cost. So when an FMO is bearing the financial burden of the quoting tools and products and the carrier says, hey, these particular pick-ins or PBPs don't have a commission, then the FMO, if they keep it live on the platform, it actually costs them money just to have it around and to quote.
That's one piece of it.
Yep.
The carrier can say no.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And also kill it on the other side.
That's correct.
Yep.
Which they did in most cases.
Right. And because the carrier then controls it.
Yep.
And a lot of the carriers ended up doing changes like that in the middle of AEP.
Yep.
Which you have a lot of disruption, and then you have that kind of a change. I had one carrier that did it with 3 weeks left in the AEP season.
Yep.
That doesn't give beneficiaries the very one thing that CMS said that they did not want was steerage of any kind in the marketplace.
Yep.
And to be able to say, okay, well, you have to put regulation in place because there's nothing in there that says you can't do this.
Yeah, and imagine this scenario, too, to kind of give a little more context. Imagine you're a broker in a community, you write a product, you talk to somebody on Medicare, you write them a plan October 17th for a 1/1 effective. You get a referral, a month later, and they're like, hey, I want to sign up for the same plan my friend did. And you're like, oh, yeah. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry, what do you mean you can't do it anymore?
You got to call the carrier. You got to
yeah.
call 1-800-Medicare. You got to call anywhere but us.
I don't even have the ability to write that anymore. They took it away, so to speak.
Let me try to find you a paper app and a phone number that we
Right.
spent 10 years getting away from.
Exactly.
I'll stick it in a pail of a donkey. We'll stick it with
Yeah.
donkey and send it to.
So that was one of the things that we were looking at. Another one was prior authorizations and the mess with that
Yeah.
everybody has concerning Med Advantage. Another one was the hospital systems and hospital negotiations with contracts. Right now, for the last 10 years, the carriers and the hospital systems have almost been in a negotiation war.
Right.
And because the hospitals are understaffed, they don't have enough funding. They can't get the funding from the government, so they're going to go after the carrier. And they have figured out, well, if I do a media play in to basically scare the living hell out of the beneficiary by sending them letters, do postcard billboards and everything else saying, you're going to lose your doctor because XYZ won't play nice in the sandbox.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then you have this fear going on. So one of the things that we are trying to push for is for them to say, stop that. They should not be allowed to do that with a beneficiary and causing them that and especially in the middle of AEP,
Yep.
where that becomes a concern. And then
It creates a lot of turmoil, and
Yeah.
candidly, just to, again, what you see is on both sides of it, the hospital systems a lot of times want to have a contract renewal for a 1/1 because
Right.
it gives them some leverage and negotiating powers in the middle of annual enrollment period, right? The annual election period. And then the carriers want a different renewal date of like April or June. And there's always even a push-pull as to what date they want on the contract renewal for
Yep.
leverage. And the consumer gets caught in the crosshairs.
Yeah,
between-
Cold War all the
Actually-
time.
Yeah.
I'm actually teaching a CE on the provider contracting and how that works behind the scenes. Actually, next week. Because not too many know how, what's the difference between an HMO and ACO and a PPO and how they all work and all of that fun stuff.
Sure.
But anyways, the last piece that we tied in that joint letter is regarding the unsolicited calls and the separation of the individual agent out of the TPMO or third-party marketing organization definition, and the lead generator, the unsolicited calls that are blowing up beneficiaries' phones. The issue with that is twofold. One, it's the TPMO definition. The other one is that you have the enforcement on MedSup and Med Advantage are two completely different sets of rules.
NAIC versus DOI.
Exactly.
CMS, right.
Right there, if they actually said, here's the overlying, anything that mentions Medicare, here's the rules of engagement when it comes to what you can and cannot do. Because somebody can cold call and they can door knock all day long on a MedSup, but you can't do it on an MA. So guess what's happening?
Bait switch.
So-
Agent switch
and like that
all
for-
day long.
for a decade.
Well, and
Right.
I think that honestly, we don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but I think you would agree that I think that there was a lot of very unintended consequences years ago when they lumped TPMOs and FMOs into the same bucket with the same broad stroke. And I think
it's a couple of years old, and when that happened, which I'm going to tie all of this in a second, what ended up happening is that you have a bunch of regulators and administrators that literally sit in a desk that don't know what we do all day long,
Yeah.
and they openly admit it. We don't know, so we need to look at it differently. One of the biggest shakeups that I get asked all the time is well, what's different with NABIP now in the last year and a half than it was in the last 5-6 years? Because I don't get it. And my answer is that we've had a shift where nothing changes if nothing changes. Since 2008 MIPA, you had an influx of people coming in that are brand new to the insurance industry. They have no idea of the historical on what's happened. You also have it where regulators keep compiling over on top of what's happening. And we can't keep doing the same things over and over and over again, trying to expect the same results, different results. It's not going to happen. So let's shake some things up, which is what we're doing. Now, with the joint letter. So the joint letter came out the couple of days after Capitol Conference. So we were just on the Hill. this ends up happening. We met with Wyden's office, well, former office, Senate Finance Committee.
Right.
We met with them. We had a meeting with Senator Wyden in November, or his office the day after the elections. We have the joint letter that comes out a couple of days later, and then you have the new marketing report that just gets done. What you see is a significant difference from where he started a year ago,
Right,
to where he's now actually calling out lead gen versus FMO versus agent. You have him specifically calling out the unsolicited calls. They are actually talking in the report about what is the responsibility of the FCC versus CMS, because the FCC is where those calls have to be turned in, not CMS. And that is an education program that I rolled out and mentioned last Medicarians. So it was super cool to stand on a stage this year and say, because of what we as agents did collectively with that unsolicited call, yes, we hit a hiccup with the one-to-one being thrown out of court.
yep.
But it got the ball rolling. It got the visibility going with all of this. So I hope that the people that are looking going, oh, okay, there's some forward motion here. They're actually changing and affecting things.
Yeah, I did want to hop in and just say that Dan and I both noticed that Jessica, the Medicare Advisory Group, NABIP's doing a fantastic job over the last, like you said, year and a half because prior to that, it was kind of like, what does NABIP actually do? Like what results are we actually getting?
There was a sentiment that, just stuff was rolling downhill at a quick rate with not necessarily pushback, but not a lot of comment back. It was not, a two-way street where we were providing that feedback and impacting change. It was just, we're accepting whatever comes our way.
Today's society, one of the biggest things that we found is that you have it where a lot of the agent population, with the proposed rule in November that came out, November of 24 that came out, a lot of them, it was made clear that a lot of them had no idea of how any of this stuff worked. And the NABIP and the MAG have done a ridiculous amount of outreach. A lot of us have spent a lot of time doing webinars and doing face-to-face large-scale conferences and flying all over the country to spread the message and educate, because nobody else is doing it outside of, in that kind of a form, right? And the more education that we can provide about how it works, then the more that empowers others to get involved, because then it's not as scary.
Right.
And that is, it's super cool to hear so many say, I feel so much better now that we're able to see, and we see the slow moving. It is not going to be an overnight thing. We are not going to click our fingers, and just because we sent one letter, magically everything gets fixed. It doesn't work like that. I know people that are going, well, we need to sue WellCare. We need to do this. We need to do that. Okay. It takes time to go ahead and get all of those things and put the ducks in a row to make those things happen, or to even consider if that's a viable option of where we go.
Yep. And I think and I know we got to wrap here in a sec, but I think that it's an important conversation that we're having just so that the agent community and our listeners, they know that, yes, the struggle is real. There are some challenges, but just know that there is work being done by people like yourself and others. There's organizations that we're seeing more of a collaboration. We're seeing people get involved, and it does. And we are asking for more agents to
get involved,
get on board. Let's do it.
And you can get involved by doing a simple email to, if you want to go ahead and volunteer your time and get more involved in policy and advocacy and any of that. If that's what turns you on, reach out, because we'll take all the help we can get. And my goal right now is I want 25,000 surveys. I can't talk today. 25,000 surveys by July 1, which is NABIP's annual conference in Miami. Hope to see you guys there. And then ideally, and what I mentioned on the stage on Monday is, think about it. If we got 10,000 agents that just had 10 clients, do 10 surveys. That's 100,000 surveys. Do you know how much media play that would get?
Yep. Come on, high producers.
Yeah.
Get involved, guys. Advocate for yourselves, for your
Yes.
career, ultimately for the beneficiaries, right?
Yeah.
We know they need our help,
Yeah.
and we know what they're dealing with, and so we really appreciate what you're doing. You know, the advocacy. I know you mentioned, you know, if you have that burning desire to get involved in, you know, some sort of politics or advocacy, that's not usually everybody's most exciting.
Scared the hell out of me when I first did it.
So we appreciate anybody that's willing to do it.
Yeah.
And essentially donate your time
Yeah.
and resources and knowledge to the cause. So
Yeah, and speaking of, you're going to go ahead and do a couple of panels on for NABIP, so that because we have a series that is the last Tuesday, 4:00 of every month,
That's
and
right.
there's a couple of panels that you're on.
we'll be promoting that as
So,
well. So
yeah.
Absolutely.
we're committed to getting more involved as well. We're in this together.
We're all in the same space. We're competitors, but we're also partners. We're
Exactly.
collaborating, and we're trying to do our part. So we're asking you to jump in and get involved too.
Awesome.
So
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast talking. I hope we're able to do it again sometime.
We'll have to do it again because we know we could go for
Hey,
hours.
Hours,
You know what?
easily.
we'll do round 2 after next week's.
You're on.
Yeah.
Make that happen.
There we go.
So,
Hey,
good.
appreciate
Thank you.
all you do. Thanks.
Thank you.
And have a great rest of the show. Thanks, guys.
Yep.